And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Stehpen Chong, Australian-based author of 6 novels and 4 feature film screenplays and multiple short stories. After his accident, he saw different levels of heaven, which we're going to learn about today. Stehpen, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff, and thank you for having me on your program. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Stehpen, if you don't mind, let's start around the time you had this accident and go from there.
Sure, Jeff. Well, it was one of those unpleasant life experiences, an experience that you do when you're over 60 and silly. What I was doing was cleaning out the gutters, and maybe behind me you can see the rainforest. Now, we're up high a little bit, so I'm up about 5 metres cleaning out the gutters. And the ladder slipped, and the ladder went through all of these plate glass windows. So I'm lying on the ground in a crumpled mess and can't feel my legs. Now, we're a bit remote here, and it's only my wife and I. My nearest neighbours are a good 250 metres away. So this particular Saturday morning, Camilla's here. Now, normally she's off doing other things, so just thank for the gods that she was here. So I've yelled out to her and she's come and rescued me. I fractured my neck, but as you can see, I'm all in good shape now. But it wasn't so much the near-death experience that happened at that time. It was more what happened as an epiphany afterwards, where things started to evolve very differently in my life. I had to rehabilitate for probably 3 or 4 months, and I was good for nothing during that time. But after that period, it was like, and if I could draw you back to those novels I'd written, I'd had enough. I'd done. I'd closed. I'd stopped the pen. I wasn't doing any more. But it was like an irresistible urge was saying, there is more for you to do, that you've got to write. And I was given this title of this book, The Afterlife, A Journey To. And I thought, well, and I really resisted. I said, I don't want to do any more. But eventually I've succumbed, if you put it that way. So, okay, I'm in. But if you want me to write, you, spirit, have to tell me what to do, because I had no idea. What about the afterlife? What do I know? So I bought into the process. I started to write, and it was, I can barely describe for you the sensations. I sat with no idea, no intention of, no storyboard, no character development, no nothing. I just sat and said, okay, you want me to write? What do you want me to write? And it was like an epiphany. The images, the sounds, the colours, I saw things, I heard the words. There was a character in there whose narration, it was like taking dictation, Jeff, is the best way I could describe it, just to see the different things. And I was taken through different levels of heaven, shown different things. And all I had to do was my best to describe what I saw. So from experiential point of view, it was wonderful. Yeah, and it was this trust I put into the divine to give me these things was amazing.
So this voice that you heard that was inspiring you to write, was it like your own inner voice, or do you actually feel like you were hearing like the voice of a spirit guide or some other being talking to you?
That's a very good question. I certainly don't see myself, I'm not a medium, I don't channel, I don't even like that term, but it was like, I guess the best way to describe it was like tuning into a frequency. So I would sit and I would trust implicitly that whatever was coming through would be there. But it was a listening process. So I'd say, okay, what do you want me to write? Where do you want me to go with this story? And then it was like I saw the colours and heard the music that was around. And when I was writing, it was like hearing the words. The writing is even somewhat Gothic. if I could put it that way, which is not my style at all. So you could say it was hearing these words, but it was just there. It's like tuning into a radio frequency. So I was just listening and then taking dictation.
Do you feel like it was a download into your brain, just images and sounds?
That's probably a good way to put it, yeah. Because what I saw was, you couldn't even conceptualize. With my logical brain, you couldn't even say, I could have thought of that, because that's not the case. It was just there to see and it was like I was looking at these, I'll explain some of them later, but the buildings and the colours were majestic. And my issue was the interpretation. So I'm trying to describe what I saw was probably the most difficult thing. So because, it was still a listening process. And I'm an impure being, so I guess I didn't get it all. But that's what it felt like. So, but the key for me was to, having bought into that writing process, was the trust to that whatever was coming was going to be there, and a willingness not to judge it, just write. That's all I had to do, which is what I saw and felt and heard. I just wrote and made no judgment upon it.
How much different was it writing this book compared to your previous novels?
That's a very good question. My previous incarnations they've been mind, body, spirit books, self-help books based on life experience, what I know works in life. But this one, of course, is completely different. I mean, what do I know about heaven apart from what I've now seen and experienced? So it was totally different from that point of view. So I had no idea what I was going to write, no idea about, because you could call it's fiction. I mean, it's not empirically based or research based. It's told through the medium of story. But what I saw and heard could not be fathomed logically or even thought of conceptually. No. So it was from that point of view, it was very different. And the book, in a time frame, come out in about 4 or 5 weeks, which is, from writing a book's point of view, is quite astounding. It was just there. It was like, so I, I'd sit with the writing process, and as you said before, it was like a download. It was just there, a stream of consciousness, if you could put it that way.
Would you have to enter into a meditative state to be able to, hear and see this? Or was it more like automatic writing where some people will say that they're just, they just sit down and they just automatically write almost effortlessly?
Very close. Where I am, and my wife works, so I have the place to myself during the day. So I have quiet, no interruptions. But what would happen was, like, in the morning, you'd get up and do your thing, and I'd say, right, to myself or to spirit, at 1 o'clock, you're on, and you've got 2 hours. That's how I would do it. So it was like, if I could put it this way, prepping spirit for when I was ready to do whatever was necessary. So 1 o'clock, we're on, and we've got a couple of hours. And I found when I did that, as soon as tuned that dial and tuned in, call it meditation, if you will, it was there. It was always there. But I must got to tell you, by the end of a couple of hours, I'm tired. It was almost 1 o'clock by then. I don't know what it was, but it was a tiring process. But notwithstanding, that's how the writing process worked. In the morning, if I had a busy day and nothing was happening, or I couldn't fit that in, all good. But normally, get up, okay, 1 o'clock, you're on, you've got 2 hours, never fail. Beautiful experience.
Now, it sounds like it's a complete fictionary type of book, because I thought you said it was set in the medieval times or something.
Yeah, it's fiction. I could call it nothing else, Jeff. I would class it as speculative fiction. But that's, in some ways, that's a great way to do it, because when you read the stories or stories such as this, as distinct from something which is empirical or research-based, which many of the NDEs are, which is great. But this, the reader can look at the story through the different levels. So they could look at that story quite literally and see it and make a judgment about whether they think it's good or think it's rubbish. But they could also look at it from a deeper level, at a metaphysical level, because as I've read and reread the story myself, there are particular laws of heaven and earth that are inherent in the storylines that you can pick up, which is really quite amazing. But even at a deeper level than that, the story enables the reader to find their own truth. So you can read that and you go, oh, wow, man, that's really me. I've got that. That's your inner truth speaking. And that's what the story does, really, that it can evoke that inner truth within, as distinct from something which is empirically based, or somebody's had an NDE and they've seen things and the reader then goes, oh, that's really interesting, brilliant, but they're looking at it from an objective point of view. Through this medium of this type of story, the reader can experience their own truth as it evolves within them by virtue of the story that they're reading. So I think that's the majesty of how it's been brought forward, which is great for, just to further with that, in my own experience of life now, consequential of writing this story, it's a diametric shift. I have learnt things about heaven that have changed for my life to the better in many, many ways. I see life completely differently now.
Do you think that after your fall, did you have some type of out-of-body experience, or do you think it somehow did something to you psychically or open the veil for you to get this access that you got?
Yes, I think so, Jeff. It's hard to invigilate, but I think your term "open the veil" was very true. It realigns you. It's like many of the people you've had on your program with their near-death experiences. What it does is it's like a pivot point that say, well, you can go forward here, and I will give you. This is what you've had this experience for. You can go forward with this, and I will give you. Spirit will give you tools to enable you to fulfill your dharma or your purpose. You can choose not to do that, okay, but this is what that experience was for, to realign you to back to what you are meant to be doing in life, which is really important for the benefit of others. And I'm pretty sure that's the way it's worked with me.
Were you knocked unconscious at all after the fall?
No, I wasn't. I was conscious, and I was conscious that I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't feel my legs. I'm yelling out to my wife. I actually, I'll refrain from using descriptive adjective, but I thought I was in real trouble. I thought I'd be paralysed or something like that. I had angels looking after me, Jeff. I've fallen in amongst all this glass, so I could have been, cut up. The only thing I had was a little cut on my arm. And by rights, I should be dead, having fractured my neck. And as you can see now, I'm perfectly mobile and everything works as good as a 65-year-old things work.
All right. So you mentioned about the different laws of heaven and earth. Can you tell us more about that?
Okay. And there's a number, but let me describe a couple through the journey that the main character went through. I'll catch it in those terms. The name of the character is Athar. Now, in life, he was as a child, he was abused under the auspices of the clergy, and as a young man, he took his own life, and he was stuck in purgatory in this. And I saw them, and I don't like the word purgatory, but it's like I saw them. They're stuck in mist, but he's stuck in this with his own guilt and his anger and his hurt and his pain and his suffering, and he couldn't move out. But until such time as he had met up with the bishop of the sea, and whose insouciance he was abused. Now, their relationship propelled them into the different realms of heaven. But let me get back to your main point. The main, one of the great laws of heaven is what you sow, so shall you reap. So in this purgatory, in these mists, you see yourself in life review. It's like looking in the mirror of review of what you have done and what you haven't done in life. And you see and feel what you have caused others. So that the law of heaven in this state, as I saw it, was, and the Grand Master tells us the same thing, what you sow, so shall you reap. That there's one of the great laws of heaven. The other law, and excuse me for the way I put things, but the emperor wears no clothes. So whatever your station in life, whether you're king or pauper or you're a big businessman, you wear no clothes. In this period of purgatory, in this mist of review, you are confronted with yourself and what you have done to others. There are two standout laws of heaven that in this state that propel the soul forward. If I can continue on with that, so through that purgatory stage, after your life review, what I saw was these souls exit from these mists, and they are cloaked, robed. What I saw, they are robed in clothes that you can't render, so you can't take them off, but they're multi-hued, different colours. By virtue of what you have done and your station going forward, this robe that these souls were in designated where they went to from there, if that kind of makes sense. So it designates the pathway that you follow. Some going up, others going down. It's like I saw souls coming out of this mist. Some were beautifully robed in multi-hued colours, and they're going up to different levels. They are met by kin and loving souls and taken to different areas. But there were others, it's like they were dressed in like Hessian, that is the way I could put it, and their pathway was to more lower Nether Regions, if you can put it that way. That was one of the most profound experience. That was early on in the writing that I saw these things, but it stuck with me in such a profound way that the souls come through these mists of judgment, if you want to call it that, and then that designates your pathway through and into the different levels of heaven.
Do all souls go through that life review kind of judgment day?
Yes, without exception. Yes, all souls that have passed. What I saw again in different areas in the writing was where the soul is attached to the body via a cord, a silver cord. So when this cord is severed, then you can't go back. That's it. And then you pass through these mists to through the judgment that we spoke about.
Now, do you think people went up in levels or down in levels due to the actions they have done during their life, or is it like their vibrational state?
Good question. But my understanding is, again, that law of heaven, what you sow shall you reap, is inviolate. So, but if you've been like a bad dude, done really bad things to others, the other law of heaven that is so profound is we are all one in spirit. So what you do to others, you do to yourself. So when you look in this mirror of reflection, you say, if I've done something bad to you, well, not consequential upon yourself, but it's consequential upon me. So I would wear the consequences of that action, that deed.
Do you know how many levels of heaven there are, like number-wise?
My understanding, and now I got taken to both, I can describe them if you like, to Nether Regions and shown what happens there, and up into higher levels. Now, according to my understanding, reading, there are 7 levels, but I didn't see that. I just got taken to different levels. So I don't know if there were more up there or there were a lot more down below. I don't know. I just got shown what I got shown. But the majesty of the higher levels was something I could barely begin to describe and put into words what I saw. And also what I saw in the Nether Regions was a hell that you would not even wish to step forward into. So, but it was all heaven. It was all part of heaven's grandeur, but that's what I saw in these different levels.
After writing this book, or during writing this book, how did you change as a person?
Oh, gee. I now see life, well, I won't say diametrically differently, but because fundamentally you're the same sort of dude. But I see the interactions as so much more profound, knowing that the consequences are dire. If I go out and do really bad stuff, the consequences are, really not cool, because I saw those areas. So it makes you consider, or it makes me consider, how I interact and what I do with life in relationship to others, in service to others, but also in fulfillment of what I'm meant to be doing. So very clear that I have, and given that I'm an old dude now and I've got, time frame is relatively limited, I haven't got time to sit around and wait. I've got to get on with what I need to do. So that makes life really important. So it's more vibrant, it's more coloured, and it becomes a much more beautiful space to be in, and do nothing frivolous. And we mentioned talking about sitting down watching TV and wasting time before. Can't do that. Can't do it. There are things that need to be done in concert with spirit. Tune that frequency and meditate morning and in the evening, which I never did before. So you tune in and know that spirit is with you all the time. No absence. Listening sometimes not quite tuned in, but for that spirit is with you all the time. So that's made a complete difference to how I live my life now.
Now, previously, you were writing books about spiritual stuff and self-help, perhaps?
Mm-hmm.
Did this book and this new information contradict what you had written before because it's something new that you learned?
I wouldn't say it contradicted, no, because, by virtue of a life well lived, we do a lot of things right. But at the end of the day, as we mentioned before, I think there was a not a lack, but not in tune with spirit, doing it out of here, not out of here. So now, with the understanding of these things that happen in the afterlife, that connection, I believe, is much stronger. So to be able to know that spirit is with us all the time, at beck and call, whenever needed, is a great boon to one's life. And to be able to tune in and ask a question and say, what do I do about that? And get an answer, that feeling. But that wasn't there before. It was, I can work this out. I'll do it logically. I'm pretty smart. I'm a good dude. I've got some good values. That's all fine. But now that combined with this link to to solid spirit, if I could put it that way, makes life a much more vibrant place.
Did your character interact with Jesus or God or angels? And if so, how did that play out?
Oh, yeah. The answer to that is absolutely yes. The main character was totally guided and really never separate from a master spirit who guided him along the way. Let me give you an example of that, how that worked. After Athar had left this purgatory, his spirit is not deformed. What would you? He's like he's been beaten up. So he gets taken to this. The best I could describe it is a coliseum. And again, this is what I saw. It's like if you can imagine a coliseum with which hundreds and hundreds, thousands of souls have come, and there's multi-hues coloured in this surround. Now, in the middle of the arena were these lounge chairs, recliners. And I'm seeing them go, like, what the? And Athar gets taken in by a seraph, an angel spirit, beautiful angel spirit, who places him on this lounge chair with others. There are others in this arena. And amongst the crowd, they're chanting like the Om sound, and this beautiful this music is resonating around. And in walks this master, angel, whatever you'd like to call him, and he manipulated the energy like in a magnetic ball, and and enhanced the energy, and then the energy come down into these spirits, into these souls on the lounge chairs, and some of the other souls that I saw on these lounge chairs were quite decrepit. They were like illness, deformities. Now once and I call it the magnetic coral, the light went into these beings, they were renewed. They were like stood up, totally renewed by this love, magnetic energy that this master had created. And they were totally renewed. So they were relieved of their burdens, which, so I'm trying I saw this, I'm trying to describe it, but that's what I saw. But the interesting thing about that experience, or what I learned later, was that the souls are released from their burdens caused by others, not what they did to themselves. So if somebody, like if I've done something bad to you to cause you much harm, you don't bear the consequences of those actions. So you're relieved of those burdens, that illness, that deformity, or whatever it is. Only that which you cause to yourself, you still got, you've got to face the consequences of that. But that was the central focus of that magnetic coral. That was one of the experience. That was one of the things that I saw when I'm writing this stuff and going, whoa. But that's what was there. That's what I saw.
It seems like that the novel has religious overtones to it. Am I correct by saying that?
Religious. One of the main characters, one of the characters was the Bishop of a See, but that's as far as the religious aspects went. I didn't really go there to talk about or discuss any religious doctrine or laws. I just wrote what I saw. So if the bishop character was there, I think because of his relationship and what he had done or not done to Athar in life. So they had to forgive one another, and that enabled them both to progress through these different levels of heaven. But to call it I guess what you say, show you reap, is a religious law. So I guess, there's maybe some aspects of religion in there, but fundamentally this is a book about spirit.
Can you tell us about some of the things that you learned that were very surprising or even shocking to you about heaven?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll tell you about the Nether Regions. And again, I'll just tell you what I saw, and believe it or not. So the character, the bishop, was taken by a guiding spirit to these Nether Regions. So and if you can imagine a landscape of denuded by fire, that's what it was like. That it was complete. So they're going through this area, and they enter through these portals. And what I saw were these vortices, a number of them, big spinning powers of vortex, and the souls were entrapped in these, tornadoes of vortices, and they couldn't get out. They were trapped because of their, they were trapped not by judgment, but by choice. And they were vortices of, you'd call them the 7 deadly sins, like lust, greed, avarice, anger, malice, that that trap the soul within. And around these vortices were these angels in waiting, I guess you'd call them, where they were waiting for the spirits to repent, say, okay, repent of their sins, if I don't like the word, but of this link they have to this power vortex. And when the soul was able to do that, they were nurtured and taken away by these beautiful angels to whatever happened. They recuperate. But that's what I saw, and these souls were entrapped in these nether region vortexes. In 100 years, Jeff, I could never even. I mean, I'm not a religious man. I don't really believe in a lot of these religious doctrines, but I would never envisage anything like that. But that's what I saw.
When you were seeing this stuff, would you see the character as well within these vortexes and when within heaven, or did you just see these places and then add it with the idea of a character into a story?
No, in that case, it was like I'm seeing through the eyes of the character that's there. They're looking at that, so I'm not seeing. I wasn't inside that. No. I was looking through the eyes of this. So it's all like a first-person narrative. So I'm seeing what this person is seeing and just trying to describe it. That's exactly how it was. Yeah.
Have you ever questioned yourself, like, why me? Why was I shown this?
No. Not really. No. For me, it's all a blessing. But as I mentioned before, I had to buy in. The Spirit's not going to tell you what to do. They're going to make an offer. This is what you should be doing, Stephen. This is a good idea for your own involvement, for the benefit of others, or whatever it might be. But you still get to choose. So, and I'm very glad I did because of the things that I've learned. But it's still all choice. No, I could have said, no, I'm not doing any of that. Leave me alone. And that would have been okay, I guess.
You mentioned earlier, after your fall, something about angels. Do you feel like even before this event that happened that you were already in contact with angels or spirit guides?
I am absolutely certain, Jeff, that they are with us all the time and at our beck and call. I kind of knew that beforehand, but that was in here. Now it's in here. So you know that they are there and they can be called on, as you see fit. When we meditate, that's what we do. We connect with these spirits that are there. When we ask questions about, how do I fix this? This is troubling. That's who we're asking. They are there. I must tell you, apropos to that, interesting. There was one of the things I saw was a school of guardianship, if I can put it that way, where souls are schooled in how to be guardian angels. I was taken into this school and shown this, like there was a lecture theatre, and these souls are there being taught how to be guardian angels. And you go figure that. But that's what I saw, and then there was how souls in heaven are able to communicate with we on earth was also described. So to know that these spirits are there in guidance for us all the time is, I just know it. They're just there.
Is the reader supposed to get from your book what heaven is like, or are there lessons that the reader should be learning?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. And I think if I look at it, what was written, I would look at it and go, "Whoa, that's pretty cool, and that's really interesting." But it butts up against what we believe. Let me give you an example of that. A very dear friend of mine, he's a very staunch Catholic, and he is a beautiful man. He is just a lovely man, and we have these discussions about, I gave him the book to read, but and it's influenced his life now in some way, but he still found it in a perfectly valid religious basis that influences his life, which is really cool. But the key, to answer your question, I think the main thing from the book that a reader could take is how to make life a better place. Consequential of what we know may happen when we pass to the eternal. It's time now, whatever age, to do something to unfold life, to make that eternal life a much better place. Turn away from, if you knew that if I knew that by hurting you, as an example, was going to cause me some sort of eternal angst in these heavenly realms, I would turn from that. I would desist, wouldn't I? Because I know the consequences would be too grave. That there is, to me, the great influence of the book, is how make you realise how to make life a better place. Would you like me to take, there's one other area that might be very interesting for your listeners, and sure, I could tell you about. It was a school for children, and I can, if you can imagine, again, this is what I saw. A beautiful building, marble balustrades, and like something out of a Greek history novel. And in this school, I can barely describe for you, when I walked in this character, I walked through the door, and the love I felt in this school, it gives me chills now. I can barely describe it to you. But it was a school where young children who have passed early in life are nurtured by the love of the Father. So they come into this school, be they fledglings or a bit older, but it was a school for children. So they were beautifully nurtured by these angels that I could barely describe to you, like the love they had for these children. And these children were nurtured beyond the scope of what we could even imagine. They were nurtured into the prime of their spiritual life. They were like letting them go afterwards. But that's what this school was there for. I couldn't even imagine the pain and suffering that parents would go through and losing a child. But if they knew that spirit of that child was so beautifully loved in this environment, that it would, in some ways, not always, mitigate the grief that one felt. So to know that even though you have lost a beautiful child, that child is nurtured so lovingly in spirit that you know that child is wrapped in the hands of the Father. It's like even now, I see the picture of inside this school and the love that was surround each of these young children and in their involvement in heaven. It was a beautiful experience. But to know that may just mitigate some of the hurt that a parent would feel upon losing a child.
It's nice to hear that you say that it looked kind of Greek looking, because I've had a handful of people say that they were on the other side. They were in a place that it was Greek or Romanesque with columns and like a temple. Mm-hmm. And some people even describe a room which they may call the Akashic records, that there's just like records of everything there.
Yes. It's interesting, isn't it? And I can confirm that because what I was one of the other buildings I was taken into was the Hall of Records, and it was like same thing, Gothic marble, Greek Romanesque buildings, and tomes of past and future lining these walls. So I'm looking through the eyes of this Athar character, and he's going, whoa. Well, so he was able to access records that helped him move forward with what his purpose was. But yes, I think that it's very much akin to this Hall of Akashic Records is the perfect way to describe it.
Some of my guests who have had hellish-like experiences usually were able to get out of it by just calling out to Jesus. Does that make any sense to you regarding your book?
Yes, it does. Let me give you an example of that. And I wouldn't say, two things. I saw a Grand Master in the latter stages of the book. A Grand Master came to meet, or the Athar was taken up to the hall of this Grand Master. Now, the interesting thing was that, again, I'm seeing all this stuff and the same Greco-Roman, beautiful white balustrades, flowers and gardens that I couldn't even begin to describe to you. But this master, as distinct from the other characters, so when I'm writing, I'd go, what's this soul's name? And immediately I'd have the name. In this case, I asked a number of times and I was not given. So I just had to call him the master because that was the best I could do. I was not given a name, but to be sure, if you could call him Jesus or Buddha, I don't know. All I know is, I wasn't privy to the name, although I'd asked and received all these other ones. This one I didn't get. So.
Can you describe for us what the music sounded like that you heard?
Oh, gee. Music and colour. At the end of the book, Athar was taken up to the really higher levels by this master, and he was shown. It was like looking out over the expanse of everything. I don't know how else to describe that. And it was everything was music and everything was colour. So everything vibrated with that music and colour. So at the higher levels, it was a purity of colour and music. At the lower levels, the music and colour was still there, but it was like layered, if that makes sense. There was like had dirt on it, if that makes sense, maybe. But that's what I saw. It was like this: the music and the colour infiltrated everything that we are. Every aspect of heaven was music, beautiful music, and colours that I couldn't even begin, more than the colours of the rainbow. I couldn't even begin to describe. But that's what I saw. But at the nether regions, that music and colour was still there, but it was if it was, it had been rolled in dirt, if I can put it that way. That's what I saw with the master showed this character from on high.
It sounds like, to me, that music and color are one in a way.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's pretty close to absolutely correct. Yes. And it's part of us all. So I guess we have to tune into this music and vibration, as you mentioned before, that enables us to evolve to these higher levels. I don't know, that's a bit beyond me. I don't know. But that's what I saw.
At this point of your life, do you fear death at all?
No. I can't put it any more directly. No, not at all. I know what, it's hard to say that you can believe what you read or hear as you will, but I know this to be, I feel it to be true. I know it's part of my DNA. So no, because I know what awaits. Yes, there'll be you go through this purgatory or whatever, but to know the love and nurture that is beyond the veil, it takes away the fear. We've all got to pass and it will all happen, but there is no fear. Yeah, absolutely none.
How do you think your veil was opened from the accident? Get this nudging for you to write this book.
Yeah, it is a very good question. I suspect. The accident was obviously like a pivot point in life. So I could either opt out and say, "Okay, I'm done. I'm out of here. It's all good," or you can go forward. And spirit, you will receive. And I hate the term, not superpowers. It's not even close to that. But you'll be given gifts that will enable you to go forward. And I think that's the crux of it. So that pivot point in life, it's called, if we want to call it a near-death experience, but at least it's a point that you get to choose. You say, Chong, you can go that way and go out, or you can go forward, and here's what's going to happen. Tune in, if you will.
I've talked to some of my other guests about this, and we called them exit points during their NDE, where they could come back or they could stay. Do you feel like during your fall or right immediately after your fall, is that when you got the choice of either staying or you can go and that's it?
Again, it's another very good question. What I know is I was on the fall, I should be dead because the size of it, 5 meters. And, I'm an old dude now. I'm in a brittle bones and all sorts of things. I was loved by the angels at that time. I was nurtured by the angels. If my wife hadn't have been here at that time, which she normally wasn't, I'd still be lying in it. I would have died because there'd be nobody around. No means of contacting anybody. So it was I know that I was looked after when the fall happened, and spirits were there to take care of me. I can't describe it any other way. I was nurtured. And for me, that means that I've got more work to do. They are there to help me. I've got things to do.
Right. So it was kind of like a synchronicity that happened to that. Your wife was home, angels were there. What would have happened to you if you would have refused to write the book?
I'd hardly want to think about it, really, Jeff. I don't know. I guess life would have been fine. And I'm a well-gifted man with a beautiful wife and family and things. So all would have been okay.
Right.
But it's not living to one's fullest potential.
Right.
You've got time on earth. You're a healthy young man. I mean, but me, 65 now, relatively, I've got a limited time to do things. And it's important that I do them.
Right.
and given such with the gift, the grace that was given, one by the fall. Okay, you've fallen. The Spirit nurtures you. Now it's up to you to choose to go forward with the gifts that I will give you. Is kind of the way I see it. So, but it's okay if you don't want to. It's all right, Stephen. You can go ahead and do your thing,
right,
and be happy. But you're not living to your fullest potential.
Right. Do you think it's possible that you planned writing this book even before you incarnated?
I don't think so, mate. No, I'd shut down. No, absolutely shut down. I know that. Because the writing process is a beautiful one, but the after the publishing is a pain. And I said, I'm done, and I've written these screenplays and been demonstrably unsuccessful in their application. So I've got them nowhere. So I thought, I'm done with all of this stuff. Leave me alone. I'm not doing anymore. So that was a conscious decision that got reversed, which is okay now. And I'm so glad that I did.
One last question about your book, and that is, does the character at some point get a choice to come back and reincarnate, or does the character just stay in heaven for infinity?
Yes. The character, we describe it, he gets taken to the school of guardianship, so where he meets an angel guardian who goes down to Earth and looks after his designated soul. But he learns how to cross over the veil. He gets shown, in fact, in the book, it's described how he is taken with his guardian, this angel spirit, to meet up with a being, a young lady as it was, and they have a discussion. Just like you and I sitting on the computer, this spirit is talking to this young lady while she's sitting at her desk. And it was shown how that was done. So it was really kind of cool. So yes, it was shown how the spirit crosses over to help we on Earth.
All right, again, the book is called The Afterlife, A Journey To, correct?
Correct, yes.
And do we find that book on your website or on Amazon or both?
We're a bit early yet, Jeff. It's still in production stage.
Oh, it's not.
We late October, November. It will be on the shelves. So we've got whatever it is, 5 or 6 months to go yet. But yes, there's still a bit of work to be done.
All right, once you publish it, you should come to one of my Saturday night live streams. And on Saturday nights, which would be Sunday morning for you since you're in Australia, I let anybody join me for about 10 minutes and share their spiritual or paranormal experience. From time to time, guests will come back and they'll pop in too and tell us what they're up to or how they're doing. And so it'd be great for you at that point to just pop back up and say, hey guys, it's me, I'm Stephen, I'm back, and my book's out.
Hey, much appreciated. Consider it done. So Thank you very much. Yeah. I will join your Sunday morning talk show with pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
That'd be great. All right. Well, do you have anything else that you're working on that you want us to know about?
Not at this stage, Jeff. No. I no. There's been no inspirations to write anymore. I'm not sure whether I'm thankful for that or not.
You're finally finished?
I don't know. We'll see. But no, the book publishing process, as I mentioned before, is just work. Backwards and forwards with the publisher and stuff. It's all good, but I've tuned the head into that phase rather than the creative phase, if you put it that way. So I've turned the dial to publication rather than production, if you know what I mean.
Right. If you don't mind, I'm just curious. What is it about publishing that you don't like?
You've got to put your business hat on. I've made some over the 5 or 6 books. I've made some not so salubrious decisions about what to do and how to do it, and I've seen money pour down a drain very quickly. So it becomes It's all part of the process, but publication there are pitfalls for the unwary. We could spend a whole day on that,
Right.
but there are things that one needs to be very cautious of in the publication process, and the choice of who you publish with or how you publish, which would determine where and how the book goes and whether you succeed or not. There's lots to it, and it can be hard work. There's kind of road shows, but you get to talk to really nice people on Zoom videos as well, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
You are never without the love of the Father. Never, 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 never. You just have to call. I know that like it's a part of my DNA. He is there for us all the time. We just have to call and then listen.
Well, that's a great message. Stephen, thank you so much for being my guest, and I wish you massive success with this book.
Thank you, Jeff. It was a great pleasure to be with you, and yes, hello to all to your listeners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Good on you, mate. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.